Hello, folks, and welcome to Author Adjacent, a show about the journey from hobbyist writer to professional author. I am your host, Michael Vadney, and today we have returning guest Joseph John Lee. Joe Lee is the author of the Spellbinders and Gunslingers trilogy and the Dragons of Nora series, which, as of today of this recording, has released its latest edition. Welcome back to the show.
Thank you for having me, Michael. It's a delight to be back on. And yes, here it is. The new book in the Dragons of Nora series, Dragon Along. It's out today as of this recording in all formats. Kindle, paperback, what's this? Hardcover, that's what this is called. And yeah, clearly I'm a writer, not a speaker.
No, still, congratulations. We were talking a little before the recording started, that this is now your 6th release. That's amazing.
Yes. Yeah, it's wild journey, looking back, what's it, 3 years ago at this point. It was actually 3 years ago, almost to the day, that I announced on Facebook and Instagram and everywhere that I was releasing a book, which became The Bleeding Stone. And, here we are, 3 years later and, 6 books later. It's wild.
That is absolutely wild. 3 years, you're averaging 2 books a year, which I gotta say, I'm really jealous. That is amazing. What do you think is keeping you on task to pump out these books so quickly?
I think part of it is anxiety, honestly. Just wanting to get all these books out and just kind of stay relevant enough that keep people coming back and keep people from forgetting that I write books. But also, it's really just a matter of honing the craft and just continuing to try new things, try different kinds of books, different kinds of writing, and just be well versed in a lot of different styles. I mean, obviously, the Spellbinder series was like noble, dark historical fantasy, and Dragons of Nora is the complete polar opposite of it, which, cozy comedic fantasy, like Pratchett-esque, like Monty Python-esque. So, it's been a very fun experiment, this series, shall we say.
Yeah. One, I do love hearing that you're using the Noble Dark moniker to describe your original series. I want to see that gain traction because it's a very, I don't want to say it's niche, but it's very aptly describing a lot of series of books that kind of just get thrown into more general genres. But yeah, just talking about how your process has changed over the 6 books. Would you say that it's progressing in a certain direction, or is it every book you try something new and you keep pieces and kind of slough off the rest?
So I definitely try to do something new every release, and my philosophy is always to try to be better than your previous book. Yeah. And I go back 6 books ago to The Bleeding Stone. There are things that I look at it now and I wouldn't necessarily do today. And likewise, when for the next book, I'll probably have done things in Dragon Along that I don't anticipate doing again in the future. So it's really just learning from each successive book, learning what works, learning what doesn't work, and then just kind of going from there. I mean, with Dragon Along, it's a very different plot from Upscaled, both in terms of just what happens in it, and also it's a different lead character. Going into it, I feel like I probably didn't advertise this as well as I should have, but when I set out to write Dragons of Nora, and this was when I was finishing up the Legion of the Lost, which was the final book of the Spellbinders trilogy, I was reflecting on how much my niece and nephew love to read, and how the Spellbinder series was very much not for them. I mean, they're 12 and 8, so they're not the target demographic there, but I still wanted to write something that they could enjoy themselves. So the main characters in Upscaled and Dragon Along are just based on my niece and nephew, respectively, for each book. So where Upscaled followed the character that's, based on my niece, Dragon Along follows the character that's based on my nephew. So it's just, and, for spoilery reasons, at the end of Upscaled, their paths kind of diverge. So it gave me leeway to do something completely new and unrelated from Upscaled when I wrote Dragging Along. So that was it's definitely a fun challenge, a different challenge when you're writing a comedy sequel versus like a regular sequel, because then you have the added pressure of, oh crap, I don't want to recycle jokes from the first book.
Well, you can always bring back some ones with like a fresh twist, but I can definitely understand the danger of not wanting to repeat yourself. So, when you're structuring, actually, no, before I get into that question, I have an important question to ask then from our last interview that we did with
Yep.
you. You mentioned that the main characters of the Dragons of Nora are your niece and your nephew. And I remember last time you talked about like some of your friends and other family members were thrown in. I have two questions. Is the character based on you still in there? And did you end up getting your parents into dragging along like you were thinking about doing?
My character is kind of in it. My character is mentioned a lot, but also I'm like kind of more indirectly in it rather than physically there. The characters based on my parents are very much in Dragging Along. I had a lot of fun with the character based on my dad. For those who have read Upscaled, you may remember the belligerent gnome that was a prominent side character in that book, who was also based on my friend Adam. So hi, Adam. But there's a different gnome in Dragging Along, and I had a lot of fun with that gnome and the character based on my dad, and I'll leave it at that. And then the character based on my mom is like along for the adventure as well. So, so there are some a good number of returning characters, a lot of new characters as well. So it's a little bit of a balance of continuing some of the plot threads from Upscaled while still making it like its own independent thing.
I had to make sure that senior Mr. and Mrs. Jolie ended up in the series, because I remember you talking about how much you involved like your family members and even a few of your friends in the original Upscaled. Did you ever, as you were writing Dragging Along and people were hearing about Upscaled and hearing about the influences of your family, did you have people coming out of the woodworks and be like, hey, throw me in there too?
Not quite yet, but it could happen. I've had a couple of friends like, "Oh my god, that's Annie!" Like to a T, and it's like, "Yep, absolutely."
No, that's really cool though, because it's also an interesting insight that those people get to have on your interpretation of the people in your life.
Right.
Like that's got to be pseudo dangerous, but also a very interesting experiment.
It's all in good fun too. Like the jokes I have, like I have it anyone else's expense. I have the most jokes at my own expense, so I just kind of defend it that way. But nothing's ever malicious. Everything's in good fun. So it never really crossed the danger territory at all, I don't think.
That is good. That is a fine balance to keep the family happy that I encourage you to continue.
Yes.
So you now have Upscaled and Dragon Along. Is the series going to continue, The Dragons of Nora, or is it just going to stick as a duology?
I think I should get more laughs from the people who come up to me and say, "Hey, it took me so long to realize that this character is actually like this person in real life. Like the character Anya is based on my wife Annie." When I first started planning the series, I intended to just make it a duology, just make it one book for my niece, one book for my nephew, call it a day. And then the more that I thought about it, the more I was coming up with like pun titles for potential future books.
I do appreciate a good pun title.
Yeah, the more I thought, this could be great to make it kind of like a Discworld style world where there's a lot of a lot of unconnected standalone books that are all in the same goofy world. I basically keep a running Google Doc of if I come up with a good title that can work as a pun with like some relation to dragons, I jot it down and then think of like a plot that could be based around that title. So like I'm probably giving away like free titles to someone or other who may be listening, but like come with like things like Claw and Order, Old Flames, Winging It, like stuff like that.
I love that.
So
Claw and Order is
and
definitely the strongest one of those so far. That was a solid start.
yeah, I mean, honestly, I'll probably just rewatch that Law and Order parody of Community, and
Oh,
just say, you
that's
know
a
what,
good episode.
I'll do something with this. But I may also return to the stories of Ailish and Cameron in later books as well. For now, it's being tabled so I can focus on my next project for a little bit, but it is something that I'm keeping in the back pocket. It's definitely not a forever goodbye. It's just kind of a see you later thing for now.
Well, you originally started this series as a palate cleanser from the spellbinders and the gunslingers, so you could always keep the Dragons of Nora in your back pocket to kind of just do revisit in between series, because I know I've heard a little bit of your current project, and we're planning to get more into that, I think, in the next recording that we're going to go into, because spoiler alert, Jolie's going to be back real soon. And we'll be talking a lot about your project, but what can you tell us a little bit right now, kind of just tease what you're working on at the moment?
Yeah, so I'm working on what's planned to be an 8-book epic fantasy project right now that I haven't revealed like the full title or anything for any of it yet. I'm just calling it Project Herodotus. And Herodotus, for those who know ancient Greek history, Herodotus was an ancient Greek historian who is called both the father of history, but also the father of lies. And when I started to think more about that, the more I thought how thematically that fits extremely well with what Project Herodotus is going to be. A found history of discovering lost truths and dispelling old lies or new lies. So it's kind of framed in a historical document that a present day historian is reading through, while also having his own interjections throughout in the form of footnotes spread throughout the book. I'll definitely go into it a bit deeper later, but that's the general gist of what we can expect with that.
I'll probably say this again when we talk about it more in the next episode, but this is giving me really strong Final Fantasy Tactics vibes.
And that is the exact inspiration for that. I mean, Final Fantasy Tactics is one of my favorite games of all time.
It's the best game ever.
Yeah, and like everybody's arguing, what the best Final Fantasy is, like 7 or 4 or 10 or 8 or whatever, and it's like, it's Tactics, and you guys are just all off base.
Yeah. Oh, 100%. Like, the story is amazing. The mechanics are super fun. The job system has never been replicated that good in a game sense. Like, it's a perfect 10 out of 10 game for me. No one can convince me otherwise. I've played it like probably 24 times, though I want to again recently. I haven't played it in, oh God, might be close on 8 years now. I need to find a way to emulate that.
I actually emulated it last year. I actually did a modded version of the War of the Lions remake. That kind of fixed a lot of stuff that was wrong with the PSP version, but while also just kind of throwing in new twists on the job system, especially with like the unique units and everything. Like it was really fun. It also made Orlando a little less broken. Because that's just putting the game on easy mode once you get him.
Yeah. I think I will, after the recording, I will definitely need to get that information from you so I could start playing it immediately.
Yep, there you go.
It's just been way too long. Like, isn't the story of that game based on the War of the Roses, or am I getting that wrong?
Yeah, it was heavily influenced by the War of the Roses, and to that point, it's like same with a Song of Ice and Fire had the same inspiration. So I mean, play Final Fantasy Tactics, and like these power struggles are really like Game of Thrones almost, and I mean it's kind of less that in Project Herodotus. before I like go fully. It's like, oh yeah, this was also inspired by War of the Roses, but yeah, Final Fantasy Tactics drew a lot of influence from that.
Oh, I absolutely love that. God, now you got me all hyped to play the game. But let's focus on the task at hand.
Oh yeah, we got books to talk about, don't we?
We do have books to talk about, sir. You have 6 of them. We have a lot to say. But what I did want to ask you, and you talked about it a little bit earlier, is when you're starting a series, how do you balance planning it versus like how do you plan the overarching like narrative arc with leaving room for like organic development for sequels?
It kind of depends
like, how do you plan
on
that
the complexity of the series that I found. Like for like the Spellbinder series in particular, I did like broad strokes outline of the entire series before I even wrote a single word of the first book. So I did chapter by chapter outline of what I wanted to happen at each individual point in the story, but like various organic things about like different character developments, they kind of just came up as I wrote them, like different relationships between characters. Some of them were pre-established in the planning. Others just kind of came up because I thought, you know what, this will be a good thing to include, I think, without it feeling too ham-fisted here. So it's really just kind of like with a more in-depth series like Spellbinders was. It was knowing where I was going from point A to B to C to D. But like point A1, A2, B1, B2, those just always come up when I'm writing. But for something like Dragons of Nora, where it's much, like saying it's simpler is maybe doing it a little disservice, but by comparison, it is simpler. It was really like, a lot of it was more organic because so much of it is just based on humor, and humor is not something that you can necessarily plan in an outline. It's not like going, okay, chapter 1, say this joke right here. It's like kind of leaving it's kind of establishing different pinpoints on the map to know where you could potentially make a good joke about something, or where I'm going to potentially riff on something, but the actual jokes themselves don't actually necessarily come out until I'm actually physically there writing it. Like there's like a big part of the humor in Dragging Along is the various like in-world book titles that came up organically, and one of them I was just on a great roll when I was writing it, just going through this library, like one sentence after the other. I came up with the Ulster cycle, like a parody of the Ulster cycle. Something about the biking raids, and then an oral history of the succession wars, which when the book is opened up, there's a single page in there that says, please revisit in a few centuries when audiobooks have been invented. And like, that's not something that you can just plan well in advance. That's just something that comes up organically. So it really kind of depends on the kind of book that you're writing.
Yeah. It kind of sounds like with both series, you go with more of a signposting outline where it's like, I know this happens at this point, and I know this happens at this point, and I'll kind of figure it out in between those points. But for your first series, your more serious noble dark fantasy,
right.
The signposts are a lot closer together. While for Dragons of Nora, it's farther apart. You leave room for yourself to wander and come back.
Yeah, especially where Dragons of Nora is also, it's a cozy series. It's less plot intensive. So, so like having various waypoints is still a good thing, but at the same time, there's not a lot of not necessarily a lot of like plot to work with in the same sense. There's still plot, but it's not the same depth of stakes, nothing like that at all. So So yeah, it definitely affords a lot more flexibility than with something that, like, it's very much more plot driven, whereas Dragons of Nora is more character driven.
And do you think it's more
Yes and no.
forgiving because of
I
that?
definitely like. I will say that Dragon Along, partly because it's a comedy sequel, and for what same reason I mentioned earlier, that wanting not to like um, recycle material, basically. Dragon Along, even though it's the shortest book that I've released, it was
Mhm.
probably the most difficult to write because
Really?
it's much more character driven. It's much less plot focused. It's you know, and like it's very heavily based on jokes. You're you're trying to, like, maintain that level
Mhm.
of humor while having it not be too forced, while also like trying to still have like connecting plot threads to move things forward, while also making it feel that it doesn't have a like
Yeah.
trying not to make it feel like it doesn't have a plot. Like it's like it's a lot of different compounding things that made it a big challenge. So in some ways, it can be a little freeing to have that flexibility. At the same time, it's restricting in its own way too, I guess.
When you're writing sequels, you have to often expand on what already exists, but in a way that feels organic to the reader, from like the world building to magic systems to the characters themselves, the pacing, like everything has to kind of expand while still feeling like logical and inevitable that it went in that direction. Yeah, it sounds like a really honestly difficult balancing act, and definitely heavier on the art of writing as opposed to like the science of writing. Like, I don't feel like there's a formula that people can rely on as readily when trying to balance all these aspects.
Yeah, no, for sure. And there's no one right way to write a book, and no one right way to
Mhm.
write a sequel either.
Oh,
There
absolutely.
are there are definitely certain, like, points on the map that you should aim for. Like you said,
Yeah.
continuing to build off of, like, the existing character arcs, the world building, building off the stakes of the previous book. It's a little different when you're trying to write more of like a standalone that can still expand the world a bit.
Mhm.
But there being no one way to tackle your sequel, like, it was really just kind of a new challenge, basically.
Oh, yeah. Like there's a lot of like rules of writing for
Mhm,
writing books, writing anything, and I think most of them exist for a good reason. They should be learned, they should be understood, and they should be, honestly, I think they should be used a lot of times. But you can break every single one of them if you know what you're doing,
mhm,
and that's totally fine. There are many books out there. I read one recently, the first book of the Paternus trilogy by Dirk Ashton.
mhm.
That book breaks a ton of rules.
Right.
Like there's a ton of info dumping, there's a ton of head hopping, but because he does it well, he can break those rules and everyone's just like, "Oh, this is an awesome book."
Mhm.
But I still think it's important to learn all those rules.
Yeah, for sure. And I did the same thing with the Spellbinder series. Like, it was much more, like, rule breaking than rule following. I mean, like um the very first POV character in the Bleeding Stone, like the start of the series, discounting the prologue. The very first POV character, he's never a POV character again after that point. Um, but I but it was something that I thought suited the story, and, like, was something that was important to show for the story to be told properly. And then likewise, at the end of the Children of the Black Moon, the second book, where there's this massive battle at the end of it, and the similar to what Joe Abercrombie did in The Heroes, I decided to write a chapter where it's a lot of just one-off POV characters who are, like, seeing, like, this stage of the battle, like, through their own eyes. They get killed, and then the POV switches to the character who killed them. And my editor had a fucking fit over that. And it was like, well, It's like, who is this? You've never mentioned this character before. And it's like, I'm doing a thing. It may not work, but I'm doing it. And rules are there to be followed, but also rules are there to be broken. And sometimes, if you want to experiment, you got to break a lot of rules. So that's part of the joy of things too. Is seeing what rules you can break, see what rules you can break well, and see what rules you can break not so well.
I feel like a lot of the rules are there to help people who are learning and just getting started, because when you are writing a book or really just pursuing anything and the entire world is open up to you, it's really hard to move forward and progress and get better, because you can literally do anything. I can jump off a cliff, I can break my neck, I could just skip and just pick up a rock. I can do anything. But if you tell me there's this path and you go down that path, you'll learn some things. You learn what you can, and then you're like, "Oh, I can actually just walk into the forest and that's going to be good too." I don't know if that analogy works, but I'm going to stick with it.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of similar to Brandon Sanderson's laws of magic, because like his again, it's like another rule to be broken,
Yep.
or a rule to follow depending on your perspective, because he has I guess 3 laws of magic. I forget what they are, but he has 3 of them. But clearly it shows how much I follow them. I know one of them is like the power shown of the magic should be equivalent to what the reader understands about the magic system at that time, or some to that effect. Which is a rule that I follow to this day. But at the same time, he has his own like 0th rule, which breaks the other rules, which is always err on the side of what is awesome. So
The rule of cool.
yeah.
I'm absolutely a proponent of the rule of cool. It is so much more exciting than following the rules, is to be like, oh, I can jump off a cliff and fly and explode into a giant firebird. Let's do that.
Yeah. And you always want those those rules of cool. Yeah, like especially when they're built up properly. Those are the moments that your reader's going to quote endlessly at you. Or they're going to come at you with pitchforks. I don't know. I've mostly gotten the pitchforks.
Well, that's when you make them feel, and that's the reason that we read, is to feel things that we can't experience directly. I actually do have a question for this.
Yeah.
Since you've written 2 series now, like I said, going on 6 books, does reader feedback get incorporated into a series as you keep going? Like, how does that affect your series as you continue?
Oh, definitely. If you're not listening to feedback and learning from it, you're just kind of doing it wrong, because there's no one author who is perfect, and the best authors are the ones who will listen to feedback and try to improve their works based on that feedback. And sometimes, sometimes there's feedback that is maybe not applicable to. Maybe it's a preference thing, but if there's something that a lot of people raise that it could be something that's objectively wrong with your book, it definitely behooves you to keep that in mind when you write the sequel. There are definitely things that I did in the Spellbinder series that I tried not to do in Dragons of Nora, and also what I'm trying not to do in Project Herodotus. I think one complaint was just how massive the chapters were in the Spellbinder series. These were all at minimum 140k books, and there were only ever no more than 17 numbered chapters. So there got to be some hefty chapters. I wrote a few chapters across the series that eclipsed 10,000 words. So
that's so much.
So I'm trying. I'm with Herodotus. I'm making a concerted effort to kind of average about 3,000 words per chapter. I mean, some chapters go well under that count. Others go well beyond it. I still haven't made it past 5,500 words in a chapter, so it's not as bad as the Spellbinder series, which I think 5,500 words was my average word count for the series per chapter.
That is huge. Like I will say generally, I think the advice is that the variety is the ideal. But I love like potato chip chapters where it's like one is just not enough, so I have to keep going for the next one. But mixing that in with those heavy chapters, especially when they're in these like super poignant moments, like leading up to a twist or we're at the climax where it's like I can't stop now, I have to keep going.
Yeah, variety is the spice of life, right?
Oh,
um,
100%.
and but yeah, like you always want to incorporate feedback if you think that it is like it's justifiable feedback. There are some readers who will say stuff that kind of feels out of pocket, may not fit, but there's plenty of but the vast majority of readers, what they say, it may not be applicable to everybody, but
Mhm.
it's always worth considering. Okay, is this something that I might be doing wrong? I mean, is it something that I can improve on, or is this just kind of how I am? Or you just kind of go from there. At minimum, you should always listen to feedback, whether or not how much of it you implement. Your mileage may vary, but it's still important to listen and see, like what didn't work for readers and where you can grow from that.
No, that makes sense. Um, I think I do encourage a lot of people to, when they read a book, definitely like leave a review or a rating or something. But you don't really think about analyzing a book or in your review until you really start doing it and start recognizing that a lot of things that you may initially take as like facts are definitely like my opinion or my preference for books.
Mm-hmm.
Like when I started getting really heavy into like writing reviews and stuff like that, I realized that I like stories with a direction. Like I know we're going someplace. I know we're working toward something.
Mm-hmm.
There are a lot of great books that meander.
Right.
They're not for me.
Mm-hmm.
And I've read a few of them where I'm like, this is a great book. I didn't like it.
Right.
It was done really well, but it just doesn't fit my taste. And I think when people start writing reviews early, like when they're early in that career, that portion of their life, uh, that can be shocking to learn how many of those things are just like, oh, that's just something I like.
Right. Yeah, and like me personally, I love my big fantasy chunkers.
Yeah.
You might be able to see my Sanderson shelf like right over there where I'm pointing. I think that's where it is. But like you know, like like Song of Ice and Fire was the first fantasy series that I read. Like Stormlight Archive is still one of my favorite series. You know, like it's like those big like 7, 8, 900 page chunkers. They'll meander, but yeah, they're but as long as they're building towards something, that's what's the important thing. But I also fully recognize that like you said, that's not going to be something for everybody. I'm running that gamut right now because Project Herodotus is a very like each book is going to be very chunky. I'm over 200,000 words deep into this one, and it's still a long ways to go. So it might meander a little bit, but at least in my mind, it's building to something. But I promise the payoff will be worth it.
And I believe you. You've definitely earned that trust.
Yeah.
And I think that's a lot of things with it too. Is if if you are going to meander, um, you really have to have the trust of the reader of like, hey, we're going to go someplace. It's going to be worth it. Come along for the journey. And that's something like every author really has to kind of get that buy-in from the reader. Just because like a book is long and chunky, that does not necessarily mean it is aimless.
Right.
I will definitely say that. Like I would even say most of Stormlight Archives, I do not feel is aimless.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, we may get chunks of it in there,
Yeah.
but for the most part, we're always working towards something. There's always an overlooming threat or goal that we're battling or working through. We just happen to have a lot of smaller things that we're also working through, which oftentimes roll up into that more overarching plot, which is that's the crunchy bits. You love that
Mm-hmm.
when you see something that you didn't think was important suddenly become absolutely critical.
Yeah, and like I'm reading through Malzahn right now. I could just finish book
Ah,
4 about a month ago, and like that's like the quintessential. Like, this like tiny thing here. It's gonna have its payoff like in book 7 or some shit.
mhm,
And obviously that's like the extremist of extreme, but like to like something that yes, it may be long, but also plotted so well that on a reread or something, you're catching these little breadcrumbs that you may have missed on the first read, and it's like,
mhm.
oh, this is actually fantastic. Like like shifting gears to video games for a bit. I just finished my second playthrough of Expedition 33 today.
On the second one already, you finished the second one
Yeah,
already.
yeah, yeah, I've already done my new game plus. It's
Nice.
the first like new game plus I've done in a game in like 15 years. So like that's how worth it this
Oh,
game is.
oh,
But like
everyone's talking about it.
but like the brilliant foreshadowing in that, like right from the beginning, like that when you go through it on the second time through, it's just the first playthrough is just getting emotionally kicked in the balls all time. But the second time through is still getting that, but also seeing, holy shit, I didn't, I did not pick up on this at all. Like 40 hours ago, but now it's just like seeing that little breadcrumb trail that you didn't know you were following, and like the best stories just have that
Oh
where you
yeah.
can like you see like this little subtle foreshadowing that you didn't even realize was foreshadowing, that when you go back to it a second time, it's wonderful. It's like it's a fantastic high.
Oh, absolutely. Like just mentioning books on your shelf, the Lycanius trilogy was that for me in so many ways.
Yeah.
It it's a big reason why I love fantasy stories that involve time travel because they almost inherently require these little tidbits to have like oh shit moments when you're reading through that make it that you have to reread it.
Yeah, and like
So
I'll
good.
admit that the first book of Lycanius trilogy, I thought it was fine. It didn't really do much for me because like it felt
Mhm.
very derivative of other works. But then the
Mhm.
further you get into that series, and like you said, just like as more of it opens up with like this whole time travel aspect, and like
Yep.
how it ends is phenomenal.
Good.
Like
It's so
like
good.
one of the best like endings to a series in recent memory for me, because then it just recontextualizes everything that you just read over 3 books.
Yes, that's exactly what we're hunting for right there.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like another book that does that really well, and if you haven't read it, I highly encourage it. Is the book that wouldn't burn by Mark
Mm-hmm.
Lawrence. I still need to read the rest of that library trilogy,
Yep, same.
but the
I have
first
read the
one,
first book, but I'm well due for a reread because I've also missed the second and third.
oh yeah, that was a book that I read the first one, lost my mind at the end,
Mm-hmm.
and then immediately was like, I have to start over. I have to start over right now to see how what I just learned recontextualizes everything that I just consumed over the past like 14 hours,
Right.
or I don't know how long that book was. But yeah, that's those are the best kind of books
Yeah.
where you get those insights on a reread.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. Yeah.
I would say even Stormlight Archive does that a little bit too. Not as good as a lot of other books, but
Mm-hmm.
there is a decent amount of like seeding and foreshadowing where when I was getting ready for The Wind and Truth, I was doing a reread to get ready for it.
Mm-hmm.
And I did not realize how early the reader can learn that Shallan has a sword and everything.
Right.
Spoiler alert. Sorry, everybody, if you weren't ready for that. The book's been out for a while. My bad.
Oh,
But
you're
yeah,
getting it now.
that shows up so early. Oh, yeah. The Sanderson fans are going to come get me.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And even just the like his recurring plot points that he does in the prologue of each book, where it's you know, the night of the king's assassination, but it switches to a different perspective of that night in each book. And then, you know, just going through each of those and just seeing the different perspective, like, and just again recontextualizing even just that scene is like, was planned brilliantly. And yeah, you go back and just like, yeah, those little subtle hints that like you said, don't like aren't always as earth shattering as, like, say, the recontextualization like Lycanius was. It's still it's still there, and it's still really good, and that man is still like a masterful plotter.
Oh, absolutely. His classes are instrumental for a lot of people's growth as writers. It's really great that he was doing all of that.
The criticisms of him are fair, but I mean, the the man knows his stuff. He is not, and he is an incredibly talented writer, regardless.
He's so consistent
Yeah.
is really, I would say, his greatest strength. Like
Yes.
as a writer, he's just so consistently outputting
Mhm.
quality stories. And
Yes.
that's amazing in the modern era.
Hmm.
We are running closer to the end of our time, and I do want to ask one more question,
Yeah.
though,
Of course.
uh, because this is something I run into a lot when I'm reading books, especially ones that are like the first or second in a series. How do you decide when to use a cliffhanger ending versus like a standalone resolution in your series? Like, what is your process for ensuring that the books always feel satisfying at the end on their own?
So with the Spellbinder series, I went into each book knowing that I do a cliffhanger for the first and second books.
Mhm.
Part of it may have just been me being an asshole, but um,
You got me.
but at the same time, like there is, like, I know cliffhangers are, you know, they can be a touchy subject for some readers, but there
Mhm.
is value in a really well done cliffhanger. Like the greatest cliffhanger of all is one that we're still hanging from the cliff of, and that's Dance with Dragons. And you know, we're still waiting 14. We've still been waiting 14 years to see what's actually going to happen in the book. Even
Yeah.
though we already know what's going to happen, right? Um,
Yeah.
but as long as it's something that serves the story well, I think there's a lot of value in a really well executed cliffhanger ending, where, you know, like, if it's a series that you know, like, if it's a series that like airs on, you know, like the grim dark or noble dark side, a cliffhanger can be really good because, you know, like, you're expecting to be have like that, those emotional gut punches throughout. So it's something that serves that genre really well. On the other hand, if you're like some like upscale, like a cliffhanger ending, like it would make no sense whatsoever. It's like it's kind of like a contained story. There, but and it's less like upscale was less of a cliffhanger and more of just like an open ended ending, right? So there's kind of a difference between the two. I feel where cliffhanger is just,
Definitely.
you know, like, a cliffhanger is really just where you're deliberately showing this shocking moment and it's like, okay, that's it. That's all you're getting right now. Whereas, you know, like, keeping it open ended, I think is, you know, like, there's conclusion, but there's also, you know, like, room for the reader to wonder what would happen next. So yeah, I like my cliffhangers. I will continue to write cliffhangers because that is just how I am. But I'll but I always want to make sure that it's like, as long as it's in service to the story that I'm telling, and not just to have it be in there for the sake of having it be in there, right?
No, that's very fair. I guess I'll put away my pitchfork and my torch then, and I'll trust you.
Yeah.
You've
Okay,
earned
good.
it.
I live to fight another day.
Exactly. All right. That is going to be time for us on this episode then. Why don't you tell the people where can they find you, and where can they find your books, including the newly released Dragon Along?
Okay, so you can find me I'm on most social medias at Jolie __. I think on Blue Sky on like jolie.sffinsiders.com has a as just a little wrench in the gears. But you can find all my books on Amazon, including Dragon Along. All my books are available there. I have one audiobook for The Bleeding Stone. Buy it so I can afford to do more audiobooks. That'd be fun. And yeah, I'll have more books coming down the pipeline. Hopefully by the end of this year, early next year.
Well, thank you again so much for coming on to the show. And don't forget, people, we're going to have him on again next week as we talk about magnum opus. Magnum opi? I'm not sure if that's the plural. We'll see. I don't think so, though.
We're going to research that in between episodes.
Yes, we are. So thanks, folks. Remember, the journey from writer to author might be long, but until then, let's be author adjacent together. See you, folks.